If you go in good faith and you talk to these elected officials, and since they've learned the lesson that it's better to just do nothing, they continue to do nothing. At that point, the only thing that I have ever seen gets them to change their mind is welcome, wild ones, to the Green Root Podcast, the official podcast of Eco Integrity Alliance, where we're on a quest to uncover the roots of the ecological crisis. For the podcast, we usually have Josh Schlossberg hosting. He is lost in the forest somewhere, so instead I, a typical forest raven or something, am going to be talking about this week's topic, this solo flight. Man, that's pathetic that I'm doing this. Anyway, so I'm going to talk to you about a topic that is near and dear to my raven heart, which is why politicians don't listen on pretty much anything, but particularly environmental issues. And here is what I figured out. Tell me what you think. So, first of all, would you agree that politicians, for the most part, do not seem to care about environmental issues, will listen to you with kind of dead eyes and then not do anything about it? Or you can send emails and then you get a form response, or even the way Josh and folks at Eco Integrity Alliance have been doing, you get meetings with these people, they make promises, and then they really don't follow through with anything they say they're going to do, except sometimes, because once in a while they do. I can think of maybe two circumstances. But anyway, so why don't they listen? Okay, here is an idea, and tell me what you think. I don't think it's ever been great. As a raven, they've never listened to my cawing, but there might have been a time where there was at least some lip service. So they would genuinely consider perspectives from the public. They would make a genuine attempt in some way or another, at least be open to what seems like a conversation. And when did that stop? Well, in my view, it stopped right around 2020. And what happened then? The pandemic. Okay, well, I'm a raven, so I have a particular perspective, but I'm not going to get into the perspective on it. What I hope people can all agree with, no matter your views on every aspect of the pandemic, hopefully you can agree with this, that elected officials that tried to take some form of action during the pandemic, whether you agree with the action or not, whether it was a good idea or not, whatever. If they took some form of action, there was a lot of public pushback. Whether it was rightful or not is not the point. Just that if they tried to do stuff, they would get a lot of pushback, which you may think is good, you may think is bad. And the ones that sort of just stayed in the background and just tried to do as little as possible, they not only didn't get pushback, they got reelected. So we could debate whether this is true or not, but I think from my experience and my perspective at the top of a tree, because I'm a bird, it's that getting involved and engaged was actually a detriment to their political career, whereas just either giving lip service or not doing much of anything or kind of being MIA was a benefit to their career. So I hope we can, at least many of us, agree with that, no matter our take on the pandemic itself. And so if this premise is true, the idea that during the pandemic they learned just avoid things that are controversial and it'll go away, and that's better than doing something and maybe doing the wrong thing or doing an unpopular thing or whatever. I think elected officials learned from that, and I think that became their default. I think that they realized, okay, for a situation like this, it was better for us to stand aside than to engage. Again, maybe you think that's good, maybe you don't. And they're like, let's try this for other stuff. So I think since then, I noticed this complete falling off in terms of actual engagement in on environmental issues and certainly a lot of other issues too, because this is what they were trained by the public and media. And this is why there tends not to be much of any kind of action on environmental issues unless there is a major pushback. Now, in the case of a lot of, say, public lands issues, there are bad things going on out there, but as long as they're not the ones pushing it, or if they are just pushing the status quo, which could be wildfire pretense logging or grazing on public lands, that's the status quo. So that's already safe in their mind. So they can do that. But in terms of anyone who would say, well, maybe this is not great scientifically, ecologically, maybe the public doesn't support this, maybe this is illegal, those folks are few and far between. There are a few of them, and I hope to be able to name at least one of them publicly soon, because one of them is going to be seemingly doing something very positive. But nevertheless, this was the realization to stand aside, to not push the envelope, and then that has resulted in today's political climate. So if that's something you agree with or not, I'd like to hear from you in the comments, and we'll make sure to get that information over to Josh. I mean, these are the perspectives of Raven, so, you don't get mad at Josh or Eco Integrity Alliance for anything I say. But here is what others I've seen in advocacy movements have tried to do, ignoring this information. They have been telling themselves that no, if you go in there behind the scenes, if you're a somebody or a nobody and you just have good information, you can talk to these elected officials and they will look at information and say, well, okay, the studies do show this, and you know what, this is the right thing to do. And then they pass a bill, and then they, invite you up to win an award and things like that. I know some folks who are very well-meaning who do community organizing advocacy, and that is still their perspective, that things are still the way they used to be, that you can just engage, and if you have a point, you're going to be listened to. And of course, what a lot of them find is they won't get emails returned, they won't get phone calls, they won't even be able to set up meetings. And, before you say this is just people like Josh who are annoying, which he is a little bit, but he's trying his best, there are many, many folks I know who are unconnected with Josh in any way publicly and Eco Integrity Alliance who have experienced the exact same thing. I mean, probably 100 people in Colorado who have attempted to just set up a meeting with their city councilor in Denver to talk about logging in Denver mountain parks, and they just don't even get an email back. So this is happening, that these folks are still going in and saying, let's just talk to them. And here's what I've also found from some of those folks. They'll go in there and talk to them, nothing will happen. And then I'll say to them, well, do you think that maybe it's worth going public with this? And then a lot of the times they're like, no. And what I've actually found from a few of those, and I'm not going to name anyone, and I understand why this is a concern of them, but they have other pet projects that they're counting on the local governments to support. And so they don't want to push the envelope. And it's sort of like they're being held ransom or hostage there in terms of, well, don't you want your other thing? Yeah, well, then I guess you shouldn't push that hard on this. And I don't know if it's that explicit, but I know multiple people have basically told me that. We have this other thing going on and we don't want to upset that. And I say to them, well, if you believe that offering a genuine good faith perspective on an important issue with evidence, credible sources, cited studies, is going to get this elected official to scrap your other project in malevolence, then you have just acknowledged that this elected official is corrupt. And therefore, that corrupt elected official, we have to make sure that they are voted out and are exposed, right? But a lot of these people don't have the personality type where they want to push the envelope very much. And so nothing ends up happening. And sadly, a lot of these folks then just start backing away from advocacy. They're like, well, it didn't work. It's like, yeah, it didn't work because there is a more effective way to do things, which is taking into account what the reality is right now. And what is the reality? How does one actually engage with elected officials? Well, it's a way that I didn't used to think was a valuable thing to do. And that way is you have to apply public pressure in a way that would make them look bad or would risk making them look bad. It is the only option, and it seems juvenile, it seems childish, it seems aggressive, it seems all the bad things. It's not nonviolent communication. No one's saying being mean. No one's saying name call. But if you go in good faith and you talk to these elected officials, and since they've learned the lesson that it's better to just do nothing, they continue to do nothing. At that point, the only thing that I have ever seen gets them to change their mind is that there is some either threat of or actual negative PR. And this is not a hit piece. This is not some sort of political smear campaign. This would just be actually, factually, what their position is, what your interaction has been with them, and in time, I have seen that to work over and over and over again. All of a sudden, they have their come to Jesus moment. You know what? Those studies were worth looking at. I guess we just didn't look at them properly after your TikTok video got out there, or you had your opinion piece out there, or you talked to somebody who I know who talked to us and we have to listen to that person. We care about your issues all of a sudden. So the cliche of the elected official doing nothing but lying and being corrupt, I think is that a cliche. But I think more and more they just don't want to do stuff. And they found that's the way to keep themselves in office. So the only way to encourage them to do stuff is to say, if you don't do stuff, we're going to have to let people know that you're not doing stuff. And that's kind of what it comes down to. This is what I, as a Raven, believe is necessary in advocacy these days. And this could look like a billboard, which is what Eco Integrity Alliance has done in the past, which all of a sudden got them a meeting. You shouldn't have to spend thousands of dollars on a billboard. You shouldn't have to do any of this. But we have a broken participatory democracy. We have industry that does whatever it wants. We have a government that does not enforce anything or curtail. In fact, are just partners in extraction and development with industry. We have a media that runs cover for both industry and for government. You know, I'm speaking generally, not every entity, but most to the majority. And then we have NGOs. A lot of them are actually not interested in doing anything either, or being on the bad side of things because of politics. And again, they're taking this same playbook of just like, if we actually do real public lands protection, we're going to get some opposition. So let's either do very little, do nothing, or let's jump on with the industry and government, and at least we'll have a safe haven there. And so it is up to the advocate. So in this case, ecosystem and wildlife advocates, please speak for me. I'm very eloquent today, but for the most part, all I can do is caw from the top of a dead snag. So I need your voice out there speaking, and speaking as a Raven who does not get to engage in the political process. You may be kept out of the political process largely, but there is a way back in, and it's through that principle of the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And here's the fact of the matter. If advocates don't take this step of yes, going behind the scenes, talking to the elected officials, giving them plenty of time and opportunity to engage. If you find you're just being stonewalled and you then don't go public about it, whatever that looks like, press releases, opinion pieces, public protests, what have you, it doesn't matter how you're doing it as long as it gets out there. If you don't do that, we can't just blame industry and government and media and even the weak anti-conservation groups anymore. We can really only blame ourselves. We know the path forward and we either choose to take it or we turn back and head to the parking lot and drive home, and we can't blame anyone else for not going on that beautiful hike that could have been ours, where you could commune with beautiful wildlife such as myself as a raven. So that's all I've got. This microphone, I don't even know what this is. That's why I bumped it. I am a bird. How do I even understand this? I have this brief moment of human consciousness that just briefly occurred to me, and that's why I guess Josh had me do this podcast, and so that's why I'm here. I hope you'll listen to my words, even if you don't listen to Josh's or Eco Integrity Alliance or anyone else on the Green Root podcast. So yeah, they won't listen unless you do this, and if you don't do it, we got no one to blame but ourselves.